I get into our topic, I do want to say that May is mental health.
Mental
No.
health.
May.
Irritability and all these issues that they have around their period were like more than just like PMS. They were impacting their everyday, their lives. And then once they have their period, they realize like, oh, I feel like myself again, a whole new person.
By just going to therapy a few times, it's something that, since it was developed long term, it's something that needs help long term in order to heal.
I was going to say, and it seems harder to kind of diagnose too.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Getting It Wrong podcast. I'm Gabrielle.
I'm Morgan.
And the Getting It Wrong podcast is where we create a safe space because getting it wrong is the first step to getting it right.
Amen.
Amen. Mm-hmm. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the recap on our previous episode, which was about boundaries with children, or boundaries with kids. And that's the name of a book by Dr. Henry Cloud and John Townsend, I believe. I hope I'm getting his name right.
All right.
But yeah, did you have anything you wanted to bring over to this episode from the boundaries with kids?
Man, I feel like whenever we do the follow-ups on how we've been doing after we did all that research and after we learned so much about it, I feel like I realized I don't always implement it like I would like to. Now, some of the main things, like I feel like I've always like incorporated in my parenting style. Some of the main things like making sure you are communicating with your kid about why, some of the discipline you're using is there or why you're implementing it. I feel like I do that. I feel like I do an okay job of being intentional and paying attention to, I would say being intentional and catching myself when I'm getting frustrated about things. But if I really think about how I've done in the last couple of weeks, when it comes to being consistent, I don't think I've been consistent enough in my parenting and just making sure that the boundaries that I've set with my daughter are clear and consistent. They're clear, but am I consistent with implementing the consequences? I don't feel like it. Not yet. I'm still working on it. So long story short, I'm still working on being consistent.
Yes. And the fact that you can recognize that is really important. So you know that it's something that you need to work on so you can actually put work towards it. So I think that's really important. For me, I think I really haven't implemented anything much either. It's been more of me making notes of like making mental notes of like what's happening, or like making mental notes. I'm like, okay, I could probably set a boundary here, or like, things like that. I haven't really implemented anything yet, but I have been noticing that I've been implementing boundaries within myself more than of what I've been implementing with my child. Because I know when we were doing the episode, we were saying how these are boundaries we should be implementing with our children, but it's helpful for us as well. So the time boundaries that we talked about last episode is something that I've been really cognizant of in my own life. And I also think we can lead by example as well. So us making sure that we're implementing and holding strong to our own boundaries teaches our children to do the same thing as well.
Absolutely. That's good. I'm glad. No, you're so right when you talk about leading by example. So that's something I always believe, that your kids do not do as you say, they do as you do. So leading by example that's it right there.
Yes. Yeah. And can I say that you just look very pretty today, so vibrant. I just can't stop looking at you right now. If you guys aren't watching on YouTube, you need to watch us on YouTube, because Morgan is really giving it to us today. I don't know what it is.
Okay. See, I've been trying to step up my game because you always find when you come on here. So I'm like, let me get like my friend. So yeah. Thanks.
But you guys, no problem. But today, before I get into our topic, I do want to say that May is mental health. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we wanted to do an episode that brought a little mental health awareness to you all. We are going to be talking about two separate disorders. One of them is PMDD. And what does that stand for again?
Let me look at my notes. It stands for premenstrual dysphoric disorder.
And Morgan's going to be telling us a little bit about that. And I'm going to be talking about cPTSD. It is not the same thing as PTSD. Keep that in mind. Yes. So you guys listen Stay tuned because you're going to learn a little bit today.
Amen.
I mean, hopefully you guys learn something every episode.
That's the goal.
That is the goal. But this is something that we both felt really passionate about talking about today. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to share it with you guys.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to hear about cPTSD. I've heard about PTSD, but cPTSD, even though our notes are on the same page, I literally have not looked at hers. So
honestly, I haven't looked at your notes either. So I'm excited to learn about premenstrual
exactly.
dysphoric disorder. Let's go.
Okay, guys. So you probably have heard of PMS, but I'm sure no one's heard of, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure not as many people have heard of premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It's PMDD, like Gabby mentioned. This is when you have an abnormal reaction to fluctuations in hormonal changes that are taking place during a menstrual cycle. So your body is reacting to these hormone changes. And I'm sure you're thinking like, okay, people have PMS. Like basically when I heard about it, I was just like scrolling through TikTok and there's like so much information on the internet and on social media. But when I heard it, it caught my attention because people were talking about how their mood swings and their irritability and all these issues that they have around their period were like more than just like PMS. They were impacting their everyday, their lives. And then once they have their period, they realize like, oh, I feel like myself again, a whole new person. And I'm thinking, how is this? So I was interested because I was like, how is this different from PMS? So like
Let us
Gabby,
know.
I always try and incorporate you in these. So
Yes.
like when you hear that, I guess, does that sound any different to you? Like, do you have, well, first off, have you experienced like PMS symptoms? Like before your period, you get a little moody or you get a little more tired and you get these symptoms prior to your period. Do you feel like you've experienced that?
Yes, definitely. I get super moody. And honestly, whenever I get super emotional, I'm just like sitting and like crying. For example, there was one day where I was just crying because I saw on Facebook or something that someone died. I had no idea who the person was, but I just couldn't help but like be so sad and cry. And then I looked on like my period app and I was like, oh.
That's so funny because it's like we experience like these emotional bouts and we experience just like feeling different, and then you realize like, oh, my period's coming, and it makes so much sense. It helps you understand like I'm not crazy. I thought I was just like really going through something, and no, my body is going through hormonal changes, and in a few days I'll probably be fine. I'll be back to normal.
And it's like, I hate it. Oh, I don't want to use the word hate, but it irritates me when lots of people like to use the excuse of, oh, it's that time of the month. But honestly, sometimes maybe it is.
Sometimes it really is. And there's chemistry to it. Like there is a chemical adjustment in your body, which I read about, but I don't remember. Maybe I'll add that in a little later. But there's science to back it up. You're not crazy. Women are not crazy for feeling like a different person a few times a month or once a month. So, okay. So I'm sure you guys want to know, like, what's the difference between PMS and PMDD? So basically, with PMS, you get like 1 to 4 symptoms, and they give like a list, and I'll get into it in a minute. You get like 1 to 4 of this list of symptoms 5 to 7 days before your period. But with PMDD, you get 5 or more of these more extreme symptoms 10 to 14 days prior to your period. And these symptoms are interfering with like your work, school, and relationships. I know on TikTok, I heard a girl, it's not funny. She's like, I literally threatened to divorce my husband once a month. And I'm like, girl. And she's explaining that it's like PMDD. And some people were explaining that they thought they had bipolar disorder. It turns out it's hormonal. So it's crazy. And if you think this is something you're dealing with, we're going to go over some of the symptoms and what are the signs that you're dealing with this and it's not just regular PMS. Okay. So with PMDD, you have to have 5 or more of these symptoms. Now, the first list, you would need to have at least one of these. So we're going to go over the first list. The first list is anger and irritability, mood swings, sudden sadness or depression, hopelessness, and negative self-talk or critical thinking. So when you think of that list, that's more extreme. Those are more extreme symptoms.
Okay.
That people would have. And you would need to have at least one of these and then at least like 1 to 4 of the other list.
And what's the other list?
The other list, I don't know why I get so out of breath. Wait, let me take a deep breath. when I get excited about talking, I get like really out of breath and I don't breathe well. So
Okay, we'll wait for you.
thank you. Okay. So the second list, and these are more common with even PMS, but if you have 1 to 5 of these or 1 to 4 of these, in addition to the first list, it's an indication you may be dealing with PMDD. So that includes cravings, overeating, change in appetite, brain fog or difficulty concentrating, decreased energy or easily fatigued, physical symptoms like breast tenderness or swelling and joint pain, muscle pain, bloating, or weight gain, insomnia or sleeping in excess, excuse me, lack of interest or, oh, sorry, lack of interest in usual activities, and a general sense of overwhelm or lack of control.
Okay. So you would need one of the other ones, and how many of that list?
I put 1 to 5, but I believe it's all together. You need at least 5. So it's like
Oh, I see.
1 to 4 of this list, at least one of the other list. And
Gotcha.
and keep in mind, this is happening 10 to 14 days before your period. So it almost feels like almost 2 weeks. So it's
I
like
was
2
gonna
weeks,
say,
half of the
wow,
month, you don't even feel like yourself.
wow.
So yeah, that's it sounds absolutely miserable. So if it's something that you're dealing with, I really just want people to, talk to your doctor, and kind of get it, because you don't want to keep suffering like this. Some of the common ways that they treat it is with either oral contraceptives, or they may give you antidepressants. So those are 2 common ways that they treat it. And if it's something that you think you're dealing with, it's not the easiest to diagnose. So it's important to keep track of your symptoms for quite some time. You want to try and track your symptoms for about 6 months. And just write down everything you're feeling, everything you're dealing with, and then especially when you feel the switch over after your period. So you want to make sure you're tracking that for quite some time before you bring it to your practitioner. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. That's
Yeah.
actually something I know we did an episode a long time ago about like menstrual cycles,
Mhm.
but we didn't have a term for what it could possibly be when you're
Right.
dealing with such harsh symptoms. So I think it's very important to name things because if you
Yeah.
aren't able to name them, how can you fix it?
Exactly. How do you fix it if you don't even know what it is? And then also, just to cite my source a little, some of
Mhm.
I got it was an article that I read from Dr. Jolene Brighton, and I think it was called. Let me see. If you ever want to like go back and look at it, it's a guide to treating PMDD
And
by
maybe we
Dr.
can add a
Jolene
link.
Brighton. We can add a link.
We can add a link in the description.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. I hope that can be helpful for any women who are going through
Mhm.
something similar and who can actually bring it to their doctor and actually give them a name of something that it
Right.
could possibly be.
Right.
And to piggyback off of that a little bit, a term that I learned about recently, or a disorder that I learned about recently, was cPTSD.
Mhm.
And that stands for complex PTSD. So it is a little bit
Mhm.
different from PTSD. And to give a little information about their differences, the biggest difference is between how they're developed. So with PTSD, it's a psychiatric disorder that develops after a traumatic event or experience a
Mhm.
person has. But cPTSD is similar, but it's different because it's long-term trauma that someone has experienced. That's
Okay.
what makes it more complex. It's usually something that's happened long-term, like in your childhood, something that you couldn't get away from.
Mhm.
And so it, for lack of a different word, makes it more complex. It's
It,
not something that could just be fixed by
it's
just going to therapy a few times. It's something that,
yeah.
since it was developed long term, it's something that needs help long term in order to
I
heal.
was gonna say, and it seems harder to kind of diagnose you too, because it's like
Yes,
obvious with PTSD. It's like yes, you had an event, and that caused these feelings. So
yes.
it's like more cause and effect there. But then if it's like continuous things, how do they pinpoint?
E-
Yeah.
Exactly. So CPTSD is kind of a new term that's been developed because they realize that a lot of people who are being diagnosed with all these different things like ADHD, BPD, uh, bipolar disorder, and it's like
Mhm.
these people aren't necessarily fitting all of the criteria
Yeah.
for these diagnoses or disorders. They realize that it's actually way more complex than
Right.
just bipolar, ADHD. autism, whatever that they're diagnosing these people with, they're seeing that a lot of people are showing signs of all of these things, and it's linked to what they have coined cPTSD.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
And it manifests in everyone differently, but here are a few signs that you could be suffering from cPTSD. Difficulty with emotional regulation, difficulty controlling your emotions,
Mm-hmm.
um, feeling very angry or distrustful towards the world, constant feelings of emptiness, hopelessness, feeling as if you're permanently damaged or worthless, feeling as if you are completely different than other people, feeling like nobody can understand what happened to you, avoiding friendships, relationships, finding them very difficult, finding relationships very difficult. You disassociate, um, you get physical symptoms such as headaches, dizziness, chest pains, stomach aches, and also you can have regular suicidal feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to be displaying all of these symptoms, but if you are identifying with half or more, then it's definitely something that uh,
Mm-hmm.
you should probably look into or talk to it with a therapist or doctor. But the only thing is that this term is so relatively new that not a lot of therapists are familiar
Right.
with
Okay.
cPTSD. But an alternative to that is to at least find a therapist that specializes in trauma,
Okay.
because that could be helpful.
That's helpful. Because when you like look at like those apps like Better Health and Better Health and I think Talkspace, it's interesting because they do allow you to look at what the practitioners specialize in. So
Mhm.
that's helpful.
And I do have a little list of certain situations that could have led to cPTSD.
Mm-hmm.
This list is you've experienced trauma at an early age.
Mm-hmm.
The trauma that you went through lasted for a very long time. I don't know what constitutes a long time, but another thing I have on the list is escape or rescue was unlikely or impossible in whatever situation that you were in. You could have multiple traumas, or you were harmed by someone close to you.
Mm-hmm.
But all hope is not lost. Just because you have this long-term trauma from an early age doesn't mean that everything is hopeless. You're just
Yeah.
damaged. You can recover from it. It is a longer term recovery because what you experienced happened over a period of time. Um, However, there are different stages that can be helpful when it comes to healing from cPTSD. And one of the first steps is, of course, therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I did mention that it is important to find a therapist that specializes in cPTSD. But like I
Yeah.
said, if you cannot find one, at least be able to find one that specializes in trauma, because that is the underlying symptom to all of this.
Okay.
Another part of the healing journey is to remember and mourn your experiences and move forward from your experiences. A lot of people, I did hear from a YouTube channel that I follow called The Crappy Childhood Theory. This is someone who suffered from cPTSD. She's an older woman. She's healed. I don't want to say completely healed because no one is completely healed, but she's gone through it and she's pretty much on the other side of it. So she has so much insightful information for people who are going through something similar. So I definitely recommend her channel.
Mm-hmm.
And something that I learned from her is that a lot of people that go through cPTSD, it doesn't really help for them to keep talking about the certain situation over and over again. It kind of like keeps them in a loop. So
Mm-hmm.
in order to move, you have to be focused on mourning that situation and being able to reconcile with the situation, not just talk about it, but reconcile with the situation and be able to move past it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't get to that part, it's basically you won't be healing from it. You'll really just be reliving it and kind of making the situation worse.
Hmm.
And the last part, well, I don't want to say the last part because all of this information is fairly new. It's
Yeah.
not widely studied. But something that I did learn, one of the final steps to healing from cPTSD and recovering from cPTSD is reconnection and integration. So basically, after you've reconciled with most of the things, um, being able to reconnect with people, because going through cPTSD, it affects your relationships, it affects how
Yeah.
you relate to other people. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and just after you go through that healing and recovery and reconciling, being able to relate to people in a different way and be vulnerable with people in a different way after you feel
Yeah.
safe and secure within yourself and in your mind and in your environment, you can reconnect with the world in a different way. You can make it out of the mental hell that cPTSD was keeping you in.
Yeah, that's so key to like healing. Like once you have taken the time to live that and then understand it, and then once you feel like you are ready to reemerge, that's like such a beautiful part of healing. Like
Yes.
once it's like you think of like when people learn how to set boundaries, once they learn how to set boundaries, then it's like, oh, now I'm not a people pleaser. Now that I'm not a people pleaser, I can do things for other people on my time when I feel accepting, when I feel I want to give and be loving, you know? So getting past that part and being in the healing space is just so beautiful. But yeah.
Yes. It reminds me just trauma, not even just trauma in general, but just like being a human being and being to able to learn and do things differently kind of reminds me of the life cycle of a butterfly. You
Mm,
know, it's like, so a caterpillar, I should say. So it's like the caterpillar, it's a caterpillar. It doesn't know anything but a caterpillar. It doesn't know that,
mhm,
like, let's say that it could have gone through trauma. Let's say the caterpillar is like trauma, you know? And
mhm,
then when it goes into the cocoon, it's like the learning and the healing phase.
mhm,
And then it comes out as a butterfly on the other side. Like, it doesn't know that it's going to be this beautiful butterfly. And it's like, as a human being, you don't know that
mhm.
what it's going to look like on the other side of the healing, but
That's
it's
so
beautiful.
beautiful. That is so beautiful. Because it's like you couldn't have been the butterfly unless you were the caterpillar first.
Yeah.
So it's like all the things that you've gone through really shape who you end up becoming. That's just so beautiful.
Yes. I'm glad you wrapped it up that way.
So beautiful.
Yes. But that's all that I had to share with cPTSD. And I hope that us talking about this has hopefully brought some light to something that anyone was feeling or going
Right.
through in their own lives. The topic of cPTSD came to me from just having a conversation with a friend. But how can we relate to this to what people get wrong?
Hmm. I mean, I think what you get wrong is not listening to your body. You know, you're going through all these things and not taking the time to recognize that it could be something more. So, really pay attention to your body, really notice the changes that you go through emotionally, and really make sure you're taking time to get help. So, I think these are things you can get wrong with your mental health is not paying attention to your mental health, not trying to catch, what's going on with yourself, trying to, yeah, I think that's it. Like, not catching what's going on with yourself, and paying attention to yourself and giving yourself the love and the care and attention that you need is something you can definitely get wrong.
And that's true. And you know what people also get wrong, honestly, it's not even 100% the people's fault. The missing link with mental health and people is not really having the terms to diagnose what's going on with their
Mm-hmm.
body or their mind.
Mm. No,
If you
for
don't
real.
have, like we said before, if you don't have the tools or the words to describe what's going on, how can you
Yes.
fix it? How can you get it right?
Yeah, absolutely. So just take the time to learn and educate yourself. I love it.
Yes, take the time to learn, to educate yourself. If something feels wrong, if something feels off,
Mm-hmm.
l- the internet is free. Talk to the people around you. We live in the information age.
Mm-hmm.
Let's figure it out together.
Amen. Mm.
And we could talk to you guys all night, but we've got to get out of here.